morning, everyone. I'm Janet Kavanaugh with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. It's interesting to have the opportunity to discuss these questions in front of an audience that is so far from Washington, because in spite of the fact that we're across from Disneyland and it has its own fantasy land, yes, indeed, we in Washington live in our own fantasy land sometimes. But at this point, we are faced with some very, very stark realities, especially when it comes to federal transportation programs. I'm going to talk at lunch about how we address some of those things. So today I want to talk about from a more legislative perspective, because this is a legislative battle, the challenges we have. And I think those challenges are embodied in two paradoxes. The first is what passes transportation bills in Congress is spreading the peanut butter. It's making sure everybody gets their little bit, make sure everybody gets some of their share back. Everybody's heard about donor-donee, and we all want 95% or more back of what we put in. So what passes bills is spreading the peanut butter. What produces results is targeted investment. And so we're going into a Congress where you're going to have some wildly different political environments than we've had in a very long time, in particular with Tea Party candidates, where we need to make arguments for increased investment in infrastructure. When I say investment, I mean putting dollars in places where there are actual returns on that investment to our economy. And at the same time, to get 218 votes in the House and to get 60 votes in the Senate, which these days is what's necessary to pass a bill, at some point you got to spread a little peanut butter. So how we create a program that politically does both of those things, but really is about getting the most bang for the buck, is a huge challenge. And I would put to you that creating a program that shows it's going to provide results, and Secretary Peters, when she was secretary, really focused on this question of, do we do performance-based transportation? And the National Surface Transportation Policy and Revenue Study Commission, which needed a much shorter name or a much better acronym, that not only Secretary Peters, but Tom Skanke, who's hiding in the back, served on, said we need a transportation program that gives us results. Well, how are we going to do that if we're trying to make sure everybody gets a bite of that sandwich and at the same time needing to target those funds? The second paradox, I think, in a lot of this is that we are also in a time where people are constantly wanting more, and they don't want to pay for any of it. Now, maybe that's not technically a paradox, but okay, let's put it that way. If you look at some recent Gallup polling, you have a very, very strong sentiment against spending. And people want to see the deficit reduced, and they want to see U.S. debt reduced. And then when you ask them, are you going to accept cuts in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, they say, no, no, no. And then when they say, we need to cut everything else, we need to cut waste and fraud and abuse, and then you show them that chart that shows you that domestic discretionary spending is only 19% of the federal budget, and there is no way that you can achieve what we need to achieve in deficit and debt reduction by just attacking domestic discretionary spending. They go, I gotta go watch Dancing with the Stars. I'll talk to you later. People are hiding from the truth. I think the Congress we have coming in, some of the leaders in Congress, for better or for worse, are not going to let people hide from the truth. There are going to be some folks who are willing to shout at the rooftops, and let's hope so. Because the question of, can we increase federal funding for transportation, and the question, frankly, across the country of, can we increase funding for transportation generally, is going to rest on people sitting there and thinking about what is true. What is true is we've got to start targeting investment. What is true is we've got to look at all possible funding and financing sources. What's true is we have to recognize that in an era where we're trying to reduce the debt, reduce the deficit, in an era where households are forced to live within fiscal constraint, we're going to have to start asking what's important to invest in and what's going to provide those returns. It's very hard to look past Tuesday right now and say, well, what's the situation in the House and the Senate? If we were not having an election, I would say that there would be a light at the end of the tunnel. That would be very dim because the tunnel is very, very long. And spite of the fact that those of us in the transportation business have been working on this reauthorization now for about 5 years, we've probably got a little ways to go. The best good news we've had of late, frankly, is the Obama administration finally coming to the party on transportation, with the president's Labor Day announcement saying, I'm committed to doing a reauthorization bill. Unfortunately, he didn't bring a present, which is he didn't bring the bill. We were told principles are coming. I'm like, I can write principles on the back of my hand, but I worked at DOT. I get how this goes. Trust me, it's a tough process to do. So we've got to have that president party. Once you have some presidential leadership, then we got to start negotiating with Congress, and that's where things get a little bit fuzzier. But what we know is you've got to take transportation in context of this bigger picture. We are all convinced of the needs. I don't do this job because I don't care about it. I do this job because I am passionate about the need to invest in transportation. And you are here because you're passionate about it. So your challenge is to go find 10 people who aren't passionate about it. My dad was a Kiwanian, go to the Kiwanis Club, go to the Elks Lodge, go to your local Chamber of Commerce, although most of the time they're already on board with you, but go find people who don't think about this stuff on a day-to-day basis and have an honest conversation about where we need to go. Because here is where we are tactically on transportation. And the U.S. Chamber put out an op-ed on the Bush tax cuts. It generated 68,000 letters to Congress within 2 weeks. When we put out a call to Congress to invest in transportation infrastructure, we generated 800 letters. We can't afford that. Congress lives on volume. And so we've got to get beyond these walls, and this is by far the most impressive transportation gathering I have been to in my career. But now we've got to get beyond these walls to the people who aren't the true believers like us and convert them to the church of transportation, for lack of a better word. I don't know, I got to work on that analogy, don't I? It'll be better by lunch, I promise. So I think that's the challenge. How do we take it to those folks like the mayor this morning who said, I'm just a private citizen, I didn't really think about it. How do we make people think as they're sitting in traffic, what can I do to make this better, and how do we make them believe there's a brighter future? Because as Tom Skanke taught me, nobody likes to invest in a loser. So how do we turn that notion around if we can spend billions and billions of dollars in LA and only keep things from getting worse a little bit less to we can make investments that really